Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that reception. Thank you for stopping production while I'm here. That didn't happen when I was at Nissan the other day. I had to shout as the cars were rolling off the line, so thank you for that. Thank you also for not looking too disappointed when you found out it was me, because I know when I make these visits, you don't always get told who's coming. In fact, I went to a school in Wales the other day, and the teachers all looked desperately disappointed, and I said, what was wrong? And they said, well, we had a chat in the staff room, we knew someone important was coming, and we decided it was Tom Jones. And so no one's actually taken their underwear off and thrown it at me. In fact, people do throw some things at me, but slightly different things. But anyway, it's great to be here. Thank you for the welcome, and I'm very proud to be the first Prime Minister to visit this great facility. And I want to congratulate you on what you're announcing today. Developing an SUV, which means the safeguarding of jobs and livelihoods here at Goodwood, here in this business, is a very exciting development, and the British government will do everything we can to back and support you in the work that you're doing. Because frankly, what you're doing here is something that our country needs more of. We all know as a country we need to manufacture more things. We need to design and develop more things. We need to invest in technology and science. We need to train young people with apprentices. We need to get out and sell to the world. And all of those things you are doing right here at Rolls-Royce. And that is an absolutely key part of our economic plan. Now, I just wanted to say a couple of things before taking any questions or points that you want to make to me, because these sessions should be interactive. And what I want to say is that we haven't solved all the problems of the British economy in the last 4 3/4 years, but we've been working to a plan, and I think that plan is making good progress. We inherited a situation where we had a massive budget deficit, much the biggest in Europe, one of the biggest anywhere in the world. We haven't cleared that deficit, we've paid down half of it, and we're well on our way to getting Britain back in the black. That's good progress. We inherited a situation where far too many people were unemployed, where we weren't creating enough jobs in our country. Now, since I became Prime Minister, we haven't tackled all of unemployment, but we have got 1.85 million more people in work today than when I became Prime Minister. We've created effectively 1,000 jobs every day since this government's been in office. I sit round that European Union Council table with the 27 other countries. I was there last week. Britain in the last 4 years has created more jobs than the rest of Europe put together. So we're on our way. And today, actually at 9:30 today, the latest unemployment figures come out. I'm reliably informed it's after 9:30, so I can tell you. And we've had another 100,000 increase in the number of people in work in our country. In fact, there are more people in work in our country today and more women in work in our country today than ever before in our history. So I'm not saying we have solved all our problems, but we are on our way. The deficit's coming down, the jobs are coming, the production's increasing. We are the fastest growing major economy in the Western world. And we're also trying to help people, not just by getting good jobs, but also reducing people's taxes. In Britain today, you can earn £10,000 before you pay any income tax at all. That has taken 3 million of the lowest paid people out of tax altogether. So jobs, livelihoods, taxes, but there are other things in an economy and in a proper plan that really matter. And of course, key to that is schools and skills, so the next generation can really make it in the world economy. Now, as I said, here you're doing brilliant stuff. You've got 50 apprentices. I've met some of your apprentices, and Sam and Alice have completed their apprenticeship and gone on to well-paid jobs. And that's what we want for more people in our country. So in this Parliament, we've trained 2 million apprentices. In the next Parliament, I want us to train 3 million apprentices. I want us to help not just the bigger firms, but also smaller firms get into apprenticeship training. And we also need to go on improving our schools. We've got great schools in many parts of our country, schools that are judged outstanding or good, but we've still got too many schools that are either inadequate or that require improvement. And I'm very clear, if I'm re-elected after the 7th of May, we need to intervene more quickly with those schools and turn them around so that more children get the good education that should be the birthright of everyone in our country. There are 1 million more children now in good or outstanding schools than 5 years ago, but that's not enough. We need to go further. The final part of an economic plan, alongside jobs and taxes and schools and skills, is investing in infrastructure. And you all know here in the south of England, with the A27, some of the challenges that we've got on infrastructure. We need to invest in our roads, we need to invest in railways, we need to invest in our port infrastructure, and we also need to make sure that super-fast broadband is available to everyone in our country. And I just want to make one point clear, because I know people think that high-speed HS2 is going to take all the resources in terms of infrastructure. It isn't. In the next Parliament, we're going to spend 3 times as much on other road and rail schemes, including schemes here in the south of England, as we will on HS2. But the rebalancing of our country and making sure we have growth and prosperity and jobs in every region of our country is absolutely vital to our long-term success. So those are the things I just wanted to start with today. A very big congratulations and thank you to what you're doing here at Rolls-Royce. Very best wishes with your SUV as it comes into production. Congratulations on the jobs that you've created and the training that you're doing here. This is absolutely what we want to see more of in our country. And a brief explanation of the plan, which is about jobs and cutting people's taxes and getting our country back to work and making sure that we are exporting and succeeding and selling around the world. I think the prospects for this country, if we stick to those plans, are good. But I would say this, all these things are at risk if we don't stick to the plan and stick to the course. Yesterday we had the lowest rate of inflation since records began. Today we've got the highest rate of employment since records began. That is a good double. That is a good result for the British economy. But all of this is at risk if we don't stick to the plan that is now working for our country. Thank you for listening. Very happy to take points, questions about this, about Rolls-Royce, about the economy, about what I have for breakfast or anything else in between. Don't hold back. What normally happens is I leave and afterwards people say, well, that's I should have had a real go. So don't hold back. Get stuck in. Questions, please. Thank you very much. Silence. Who's got, right, gentleman at the back. I think there's a microphone. Oh, actually, we start here. We'll come to you second, sir. Start here. Yep. Sir? Oh, there's a gentleman right at the back with glasses. Yes, you, sir. That's it. Microphone coming to you.
Hello, Prime Minister. My name's Matthew. I obviously work here at Rolls-Royce within logistics. Obviously, sort of a downbeat question, really, with regards to what's currently going on in the Middle East and Libya.
Yeah.
A lot of the media has now been suggesting that the ISIS group, or the so-called Islamic State, are now starting to look at Europe. What will the government do to safeguard us as a population and our freedom?
I think this is an absolutely vital question. This is the biggest threat that we face to our security and our safety. And of course, if you look at the threat we face, you can see that it's grown very strong in Syria and Iraq, and we can see on the news the very great dangers there are in Libya. But I think we need to rewind a little and recognize where this threat comes from. The threat comes from a poisonous narrative of Islamist extremism, a sort of death cult, if you like, that wants to wage war against the rest of the world and wants to kill and maim and brutalize people in our country. And it's not a question of the threat possibly coming to Britain. That threat is here already. We've seen plots obviously carried out on continental Europe, but we've also had plots recently to try and behead police officers or members of our armed forces, plots that could have happened here in the UK that were only stopped because of the brilliance of our police and security forces. How do we address this threat? Well, there's no one single simple answer. We've got to address it in every way that we can. We've got to start at home. All of this needs to start with a real focus on national security. And we've got to make sure we challenge this radicalization of young people taking place in our country. That means making sure it can't happen in schools or colleges or universities. It means making sure that all public bodies have a duty to confront radical Islamist extremists. It means chucking the preachers out of our country when they're spreading that sort of poison, which we've done with Abu Hamza and Abu Qatada. It means sometimes strengthening our own anti-terrorism laws so that we can intervene and stop these things happening. But yes, it also means not charging in and rushing into other people's countries, but it means working with other partners to try and deal with the threat at its source, whether in Iraq and Syria or whether elsewhere in the world. That's what, effectively, our operations in Afghanistan were about. We were trying to train up the Afghan army and police and security forces so they could take care of their own country's security without the need for foreign troops, but stopping those countries becoming training grounds for terrorists. But what I would say, and this is a depressing place to start, is this struggle against extremist Islamism, it's going to be a struggle not for years, but potentially for decades. This has been going on since well before 9/11, 14 years ago, and it is the struggle of our time. We can win it, because in the end, this is a struggle about values, and I think the values we have, believing in democracy and freedom and free economies and the chance of people to have a voice and a role in their country, that is stronger than what these Islamist extremists offer, the poisonous narrative, the death cult that they offer. But it is going to be a generational struggle, and one that we're going to be fighting, I think, for certainly my political lifetime, but possibly beyond. But we should have courage that we have in confronting these people the strongest possible values, the best possible security forces, the law behind us, and right on our side. Questions? Worries? Gentleman right at the back over here. You need to fight your way through to a microphone. There's a lady coming to you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm not going to ask you what you had for breakfast, so you need not worry there. My name's Dave Elson. I'm the trade union convener on site. What I'd like to ask you is, how would you perceive a coalition involving UKIP?
Right.
And how will you deal with the own divisions within your party, the Eurosceptic divisions?
Okay. Well, I've been running a coalition government for the last 4 3/4 years, and I think I've made that government work. We've taken the long-term decisions the country needed to get the deficit down, get the country back to work, to restore the situation here in Britain. But it does have its frustrations, coalition, because there's a lot of compromises. There's a lot of compromises have to be made behind closed doors. And I prefer a system where you slap down your manifesto on the table, people have a look at it, and they decide whether to vote for you or whether to go for the other lot. And then you carry out what's in your manifesto. And I know what will be in my manifesto. It will be about creating jobs, it'll be about cutting people's taxes, it'll be about building homes so young people can afford to buy a home of their own. It will be about more good quality schools, as I spoke about earlier. It'll be about building a strong and secure country, and I want to do that in a Conservative-only government. In the end, you're the boss. All of you will decide who you elect to Parliament. But what I would say is, having had a coalition government, I think now is the time to stick to a plan that's working, and the team, the Conservative team, that can carry that plan out. And I think the worry we have, when I look at this election, is that so many of the other options look like chaos and confusion. I don't know what UKIP would do if they had some MPs. They might well ally with Labour. I don't know what a whole lot of Green MPs would do. I think they'd probably ally with Labour. The one thing I do know is up in Scotland, if a lot of people vote SNP, they will definitely ally with Labour. And I think it's very worrying, this idea that you could have a Labour government propped up by a party that actually want to abolish our country. To me, it's like an alliance between the people who want to bankrupt Britain and the people who want to break up Britain. I don't think that's a great team, and so I won't be recommending it. I'll be recommending a vote for the blue team, and I want to fight for all-out victory. I've got 82 days to go, and if I don't achieve that all-out victory, on the 83rd day, you can ask me exactly what I'm going to do. But meantime, between now and D-Day, 7th of May, I'm going all out for a win. And I think that's a fair thing to do in politics. On the issue, sorry, there was one other thing about Europe. We have a very clear view on Europe, which is it's time for the British people to have another say about Europe. People my age and quite a bit older haven't had the chance to pass judgment on our relationship with Europe. And I want to give people, I think, the best possible choice, which is to spend some time getting a better deal for Britain in Europe, dealing with some of the issues that cause real concern, like the issues over welfare and immigration, making sure you can be in the single market, but not in the single currency, because I don't want us to give up the pound, getting that deal in place and then saying to the British people, right, it's an in-out referendum, you can stay in on those new terms, or you can leave. It's your choice. That referendum will be held by the end of 2017, if I'm Prime Minister, and the choice will be yours. And as far as I can see, no other party, no other mainstream party is offering that choice. And I think that's a better choice, frankly, than saying, let's have an in-out referendum tomorrow. The problem with that is you're really offering people two quite unpalatable choices. You know, stay in on the terms that aren't quite working for us now, or leave altogether without having had a proper go at renegotiating something better. So you get from me a guarantee, a renegotiation, a referendum before the end of 2017, your choice in a referendum, your vote, you decide. Sir, microphone coming to the gentleman here. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Cameron.
Morning.
Morning. I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest, because all the rumours were going around yesterday who was coming. And
Come on, who did you want?
No. Somebody said to me, I won't mention his name, but he came up to me and said, DC's coming. I was like, David Coulthard, great. yeah. But then somebody else said to me that you're a Gooner, you're an Arsenal fan. Is that true?
Villa fan.
Oh.
It's a tough time.
Yeah.
It's
Chewy, he's another one. He's the other one, Ian. So, I was going to ask you if you thought Arsenal were going to win the FA Cup, really.
Right.
But now, I suppose I've got to ask, what do you think of Villa's chances?
Well, I've got a sister who's an Arsenal fan, so she'll be very happy. My son, he went all the wrong way. I took him to QPR versus Villa, because QPR is my sort of local team in London. And I thought either he'll be a Hoops fan or he'll be a Villa fan. And he came out after the game. It was a bit disappointing game. And he said, Dad, those teams obviously not right for me. I'm going to be a Chelsea fan. So I've now got a Chelsea fan for a son and an Arsenal fan for a sister. And worse than that, when I took my son to the Villa-Chelsea game last year, Villa went down 8-0. And at some stage, the television camera panned onto me, and there I was with my son, actually amongst some Chelsea fans, because some friends had given us some tickets. And so my son thinks it's perfectly normal for 20,000 people to sing in unison, after your team's 6-0 down, Cameron, Cameron, give us a song. So there we are. So I'm not going to make any predictions, but I'm just hoping for a couple of Villa wins to lift us out of the danger zone. Sorry it's not David Coulthard, but it is actually a good moment to celebrate not just what you do here, but the whole of the motor industry and the motorsport industry in Britain, because we are seeing, I think, a great renaissance. We've got the strength of Formula One, a lot of that in my constituency, almost all the cars designed and made here in Britain with incredible skills and engineering. We've got the luxury end of the car market that you represent here, and obviously others, I won't mention names because I might get in trouble, in other parts of the country are also doing well. And then, of course, we've got the mass car market, where Britain is now, once again, a net exporter of cars. I've got some good news for you today. In the European League of Car Manufacturers, we've just overtaken France. This is good news. We make more cars in Britain than they make in France. We've overtaken Italy some time ago. We've now got, obviously, Spain and Germany in our sights in terms of... But it's a really important industry because it's an industry that involves high-end design, it involves science, it involves R&D, technology, exports, training. It's one of the industries we want Britain to be a real success in, and we should try and be a success right from the very top with Formula One and some of that high-end technology right through the mass car market, because they're all linked together. And if you get the different parts of it right, it can be a real driver for growth and for jobs and livelihoods in our country. Okay? Sir, hold on, I can give you my microphone. There we are. Thanks, Tom.
Good morning, Mr. Cameron.
Morning.
I'd recently completed an apprenticeship scheme here at Rolls-Royce, and Rolls-Royce is well known for its apprenticeship and graduate schemes. Are we doing enough in the UK to support the development of young future talent in manufacturing and engineering?
Tom, it's a very good question. I think we are doing more than we were, but I think still not enough. I think I've long admired the German apprenticeship system and the vocational education that they provide, and our aim has been to copy some of the best of that, and I think that is now beginning to happen. So 2 million apprentices trained in this Parliament, 3 million planned for the next Parliament. We've simplified the vocational educational qualifications, getting rid of some of those that really weren't very good and concentrating on quality. And we're also building things called UTCs, University Technical Colleges, which are quite like German technical schools that will encourage people who want to go into vocational education and learn skills and then become apprentices. And so companies like JCB, for instance, have set up these schools themselves. So there's good things happening, but I think there are a couple of areas we still need to get right. One is the careers advice we give to people in schools. So often when I meet apprentices and I ask, how did you hear about the apprenticeship? They'll say, well, I found it online, or I knew a family friend, or I knew the business because it was nearby. I don't get the answer enough. I was told at school about the apprenticeship pathway as well as the university pathway, and we need to explain both to people. This is not a criticism of teachers, but most teachers did A-levels, filled out a UCAS form, went to university. They're very familiar with that path, and we need to make sure the careers advice in schools offers both the pathways. So we're modernising that. We're setting up a new organisation to pioneer good careers advice in schools. We also need better information. When young people make a decision about what to do, I don't think today they have all the information at their fingertips. So we're going to make available data that shows what your likely job outcomes are, what your likely pay is if you go to this university or that university, if you do this course or that course, or if you do an apprenticeship. I don't want to get into your salary levels here, but all I know, I was at Dagenham the Ford plant at Dagenham the other day, and I asked the apprentices coming out of a 4-year apprenticeship there what they thought they'd earn at Ford, and they said they hoped to be on 28,000, 29,000 at the end of their 4-year or 3-year apprenticeship. Now that is probably a better salary than you'd get if you'd done 3 years at university and got your starting job. So let's make this information available. Let's make sure young people know what the choices are. Let's encourage small firms as well as big firms to do apprenticeships. But there's a final thing we need to do, which is a change in culture, which is to celebrate more engineering, vocational and skills education as much as we celebrate academic education. If we do all those things, then I think we've got every chance of being a very successful industrial nation. And what does all that mean? Why does all this matter? Well, in the end, it's about making sure, Tom, that people like you have got the chance of a fulfilling job, a decent salary, the chance to build a future for yourself and your family, the chance to buy a home, the chance to find a good school for your children. That's what it's about. It's about your life chances, and we've got to get that right by explaining to people when they're younger about the choices they can make. Thank you. Alex, here we are.
It kind of based on that a little
Yeah.
bit. You were saying that there's more women in work now while
Yeah.
you're in leader, which is great. But if you look around at the manufacturing plant, you can see that a majority of the guys here are guys and not women.
Yeah.
So how would you go forward to
I think this
get
is...
more women into the manufacturing plants, not just apprentices, but graduates as well? Because right from a young age, you kind of get told that's a boy's world.
Yes. Well, we've got to change that. I mean, you're absolutely right. For too many people, and in the past particularly, it's just been thought, well, that's boys' work or that's girls' work. We're going to banish that attitude. It's completely wrong. I mean, look at a plant like this and you can see that these jobs could be done by men or women, and we should encourage people to do what they think their talent can achieve. So there are lots of things here we need to do. Again, it's setting expectations in schools. A lot of people still think that engineering is all kind of, dirty work. And so not enough girls at school are studying the subjects that could lead them to be engineers. Now, this is beginning to change, but we need to turbocharge that change. Encourage more girls to study maths and science. Encourage them to keep it on through to A-level. Encourage girls to read engineering at university. These are all changes that are taking place, But anything we can do to speed them up would help. And one of the best things businesses can do is to get into local schools, and I know you do this, and send that message out directly. So I hope, Alex, when you get the chance, you'll go back to the school you came from and tell them about what you're doing here at Rolls-Royce. You know, teachers do a brilliant job in our schools, but I think you can remember from school all the people from outside who came in and told you about their career. You remember the brilliant soldiers that come and talk about what they've done in the army. You remember brilliant nurses who tell you about their work in the NHS. Young people need to have the horizons stretched and opened by people going into schools and telling them about what these careers and these jobs involve. So there's a role for you, as well as there's a role for me. Lady at the back.
My name's Amanda Sanderson. I head up the experiential marketing team here at Rolls-Royce. My question is actually linked to Alex's, actually. I was watching the Inside the Commons TV programme last night, and I noticed that there's a nursery, and I'm interested actually in your plans to support working mothers from a childcare point of view, and what your plans are from a re-election perspective.
Yes. Well, first of all, let me start with an apology, which is normally on a Wednesday in about 2 hours' time. I would be preparing for Prime Minister's Questions, my least favourite half hour of the whole week, and the behaviour in that half-hour period is not always a beautiful thing to see, and so you would have seen that on that TV programme you're watching. The good news is that Parliament is changing. There are many more women in Parliament. Our Parliament is becoming more representative. People from different ethnic minority groups in Britain getting the chance to serve in our Parliament. That's happening. My party's gone from about 17 women MPs to now over 50. That's still not enough, but it's changing, and I think it'll change more at the next election. And one of the things that I think has put people off in Parliament, as it perhaps in other jobs, is making sure it is possible to have good childcare arrangements. Now, I think the best thing we can do here is actually to give people some tax relief on the money that they spend on childcare. So coming in later this year is exactly that, which could be worth as much as up to £2,000 per child that you have in childcare every year. Now, obviously, that doesn't pay for all of the childcare, far from it, but if you combine the 15 hours a week that we're now paying for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and disadvantaged 2-year-olds, and you add to that tax credits for people who are less well paid, and you add to that the idea of tax relief on your childcare, up to £2,000 per child, I think that will help more families be able to make the choices that are right for them. I'm not someone who says everyone has to go out to work or everyone has to stay at home. I want people to make the choices that they feel are right for them. But at the moment, too many families can't make the choice because they look at the childcare bills, they look at what they can get paid, and they can't make them work out. And what we need is to support childcare more so that more people can say, well, I want to work, or I want to work more hours, and financially it works for me and my family. And I think the tax relief on childcare we're proposing is the best way to do it. Sir. Microphone just behind you.
Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, Russia is a very important market within my region. I'm the Director for European Sales. So I'd be very interested to hear from you, where are we with Russia at the moment and where do you see that going forward? And the second question I have, I think as the Sales Director for the region, it would be negligent of me not to ask you if you've ever driven a Rolls-Royce, and if not, is that something I can arrange for you?
Right. Well, taking your second question first, I'm not actually allowed to drive a car. I have to be my brilliant protection team who look after me, and inexplicably they drive a Jaguar. I'm sorry about that. It weighs in at about 6 tons with all the armour it's got on it, so it sometimes feels a bit like a Rolls-Royce. So I haven't driven a car for about 4.5 years. I think I drove one on the Land Rover test practice site and didn't crash, so I haven't completely forgotten, but otherwise I don't get to drive. So, and I've never driven a Rolls-Royce, so maybe one day that's something I'll get to. You've got a test track here, I could go for a spin. That would be fun. So no, I don't get to drive at the moment. And I'm hoping not to have to drive after the 7th of May. But that's down to all of you. On the very serious issue of Russia, I'll be very frank with you, because, of course, there's a temptation, isn't there, for every European country just to say, let's go on trading exactly as we've done with Russia. Let's leave the responsibility for dealing with what's happening in the Ukraine to someone else, and let's turn away. I'm afraid I think that would be a terrible mistake. And so Britain has actually been leading the argument in Europe, saying that Russia's behavior towards Ukraine is completely unacceptable, and consequences have to follow from that in terms of sanctions. So we put in place progressively a series of measures, whether it's a ban on certain individuals traveling, or whether it's freezes on their assets, and in some cases we've started the process of looking at specific goods and services that we shouldn't trade in. Now, I know this will cause business some concerns, because obviously we're a trading nation. We want to be able to trade and invest around the world, and we do trade and invest with Russia. But the argument I would make is that if we turn a blind eye to what is happening in Ukraine, where effectively one country is challenging the territorial integrity of another country, because those Russian-backed rebels in eastern Ukraine, they are using Russian rocket launchers, Russian tanks, Russian heavy artillery. You cannot buy this equipment on eBay. It hasn't come from somewhere else. It's come from Russia, and we know that. And so we have to be very firm and strong about these sanctions and say to Vladimir Putin, what you are doing is unacceptable, and it will have economic and financial consequences for many years to come if you don't desist with your behavior. And the reason why I think business should support that view is actually the greatest business interest of all is that we have a strong and stable economy, we have a strong and stable economic system in Europe, and we don't allow people to breach all the rules, to bully their neighbours, to cause instability, because it's that instability in the end that would be far more damaging for business. So yes, there may be some short-term pain in terms of putting in place those sanctions, but it's the right answer for us as a country that actually wants to have rules around the world that people obey. Because as a trading country, as an investing country, global stability, global obedience to global rules is very much in our interests. A couple more questions. Gentleman here, you can have my... Thanks.
Hello, Prime Minister. Hi. I'm Carlos Fernandez. I'm a quality specialist, but I used to be an apprentice from 2008 to 2011. So my question is, the orientation is towards that. So I think the technical schools and also the communications within the schools to encourage apprenticeships, I think is a good start. But then, what's the commitment from the government side to help small and big businesses to have a structure within the apprenticeship scheme in order to enjoy the same level of success as we do? And then, sorry, I'll take the liberty for a second question. My boss has asked me to, he's a big Villa fan, he's asked me to ask you a question. What do you think about their new signing?
Well, I'm on the second question, I'm very hopeful that Tim Sherwood's going to make a big difference. Obviously, in politics, when you see teams change their management, that can make you a bit nervous. You think, you know, but look, I think he's a very good guy. They've got some strong players, and, you know, the thing about the Premier League, you only need a few wins to get you out of the danger zone. But you have to start beating the teams that are at your level or below, and we've been a bit of a way off that for the time being. But I'm hopeful that Tim Sherwood's going to turn it all around. On this issue of apprenticeships, you're completely right, because big firms find it easy to deal with the bureaucracy, to set up training courses with colleges, to put in place what's needed to run an apprenticeship scheme. Small firms have found it more difficult. And so one of the things we've done is introduce this thing called the apprenticeship bounty, where if a firm hasn't had apprentices, it actually gets a bonus of over £1,000 for taking on its first apprentice, to get them back into the swing of doing things. We've tried to make it simpler to hire apprentices. We've tried to encourage colleges to engage with small businesses, to run the academic side of the course for them and to do it very well. But there are some other things we're looking at. And I think there's one area where Rolls-Royce could really help us, and that is looking at your supply chain and thinking, can you help us to encourage some of your small suppliers to take on apprentices, maybe by providing some of the training here at Rolls-Royce, maybe by doing some of the work with us to help those small suppliers become apprenticeship-friendly companies as well. So there's lots of things happening in this space. Making it easier for small firms, encouraging those that haven't done it before, incentivizing the colleges, providing the government funding for these 3 million we want to achieve in the next Parliament. But I think another thing is this supply chain idea, where some companies are already starting to do that, and we want to encourage you to do more. Lady here.
Good morning, Prime Minister. My question is relating to the BMW have announced an amazing investment into this facility today. How important is this level of investment, both locally and nationally, to the UK economy?
It is important. I mean, you always have to remember with these big firms like your parent firm is they can choose where they make their investment. They have to think, where am I going to get the greatest return? And so they look at Britain, and what we've got to do is make sure when investors look at Britain, they see a country with brilliant skills, with young people that have got the skills and the talents that are really worth investing in. We've got to make sure that our tax rates are competitive, that if businesses come and locate here or invest here, that they're not going to be fleeced. We want them to pay their taxes properly, of course, but we want effective tax rates. We need good labour relations, making sure that we have good industrial relations, which we do by and large in our country. There's some things we can't change, like the weather. We can't do much about that, but you can make sure trained workforce, business-friendly government, tax rates that are effective, education system that's working. And then the inward investment can make a very big difference. The truth about Britain is I think one of our great advantages is our openness. The fact that actually it's a country that people feel welcome to when they come and invest. And sometimes people can think, well, is that the right answer? Is it, are we happy that so many firms and businesses are owned by firms from overseas? I think that's the wrong way of thinking about it. Frankly, the partnership between Britain and Germany has been great for Rolls-Royce. Right next to my constituency is the Mini factory, which was a not very successful Rover business, now a fabulously successful Mini factory. I drove the 2 millionth Mini off the production line the other day. I actually turned the wrong way when I got off the production line, so you can get anything wrong in this game. But that's a great story about German investment, British technology, British design, and combined skills. So these investments, being an open economy, welcoming investors from China, from India, from across Europe, is really important to our industrial future. And right now, Britain is getting more investment from around the world than any other country in Europe. And making sure we're a business-friendly country is all key to that. Questions, thoughts? I'm conscious you've been looking at the back of my head, so if there's a question from back here. Lady here.
Can you hear me?
I've got you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Jill Payton. I'm Dealer Marketing Manager. Just going on to the comment about childcare, I speak to many parents, working parents in the local community, and there seems to be a general opinion that the school system is antiquated in terms of taking on board the commitments of working parents. And in terms of your school and education planning, I just wondered what was being considered there.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point and one that's really worth looking at. Lots of schools now are offering wraparound care. So they're running breakfast clubs in the morning, they're running after-school clubs in the afternoon, and that can, for many working parents, can work better than having school and a childcare arrangement. So I think we should do everything we can to encourage schools to look at that. I'm not sure we should mandate it for every school, because there will be some places where it might not be the right answer, but everything we can do to encourage schools to make that happen, to help them through the sort of thicket of health and safety and concerns about using schools for other purposes, anything we can do there we should. Because basically what we've got to do is make it easier for people to find the childcare answer that works for them. It might be a workplace creche, it might be a childminder, it might be extended hours at school, it might be a nursery. No one wants exactly the same thing. So the more we can put the power in the hands of parents, for instance, through this tax relief, the more we'll be able to have a system that's driven by what you want and what others want, rather than something just mandated from above. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Let's take a gentleman over here. AJ.
Coming Prime Minister. I've done a fair bit of travelling in Germany. The HS2 link, do you think it will happen?
Yes, definitely. It will happen because we are passing legislation through Parliament to make it happen. Frankly, Britain has been behind in terms of high-speed rail. If you look at many other European countries, you look at what's happening in China, I think that these big infrastructure projects can make a big difference to our country. So, look, the good news is we've got Crossrail almost completed now, the biggest construction project anywhere in Europe, happening under our capital city. That's going to have a transformational effect on London. We've got very big investment going into our railways, electrifying the West Coast line, electrifying the Midland Main Line. We're spending more on the railways now and in the next 5 years than at any time since Victorian times. But frankly, we need it because a lot of the infrastructure has become outdated. Why I think High Speed 2 makes such good sense is that, first of all, it deals with a capacity problem. You know, the line between London and Birmingham is full. Every day, thousands of people stand up as they arrive in London or stand up all the way as they arrive in Birmingham. We need to build a new line. The only question is, should we build a standard one or should we build a high-speed one? And I think if you've got the opportunity to invest in the new technology, you should go for that. So there's a capacity issue between London and Birmingham. There's also then a huge opportunity of linking up effectively 8 of Britain's 10 largest cities as you go to the next stage of High Speed 2, because you're linking Birmingham and Leeds and Manchester with so many other important stops on the way. So people think High Speed 2 is all about speed and the time of the journey. That's part of it, but it's also about capacity and it's about connectivity. It's about connecting up the big cities of Britain. And here's why I think it's really important. You know, we've had economic recoveries before when too much of the growth and the jobs have been in London and the South East and not spread around the country. And I'm absolutely convinced that you change the economic geography of your country by these big investments in road and rail, and then you can spread wealth and prosperity much more evenly around your country. And this is what this whole northern powerhouse idea is about. You know, the individual cities of the north of England, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, they are successful economic entities, but actually if you link them up in terms of their transport and their science and their universities and their business, they become another potential London for our country in terms of a real counterpoint north and south. So it's all part of the plan. Infrastructure is a key part of our plan. You can't have a long-term growing economy unless you invest in this infrastructure. So High Speed 2 is absolutely right. But as I said, we are spending 3 times more on other road and rail schemes, including some important ones around the A27, which I know is an issue of great importance, as we are on High Speed 2. Can I thank you all very much for coming? Can I thank you again for the incredible work that you're doing here at Rolls-Royce, the training, the skills, the exports. This is all very much part of what we want to see in our country. You've given me a very warm welcome, for which I'm very grateful. Best of luck with the SUV. I look forward to seeing it rolling off the production line and being sold all over the world and here in the UK. And in the meantime, let's take a moment to celebrate what the British motor industry is doing. From here, I'm going to be off to Vauxhall, where they're taking on another 250 people because their vans business is doing well. Later on today, I'm going to be going to Cosworth, a great British engineering company, taking on another 70 people. So we're seeing a renaissance in the British motor industry, just as we're seeing a renaissance in the British economy, and you're a vital part of that. So thank you very much indeed.